בכל מצב שיש אסור להתייאש ואפילו כשאתה חושב שאין לך כוח אבל דע שיש הרבה כוח יש הרבה ואפילו כשאתה חושב שאין לך עצות אבל דע שיש הרבה עצות שהשם יתברך יכול לעזור בכל בכל מצב שיש אסור להתייאש.
Good evening! How are you, my holy sisters and brothers? That was Joey Newcomb singing his song Koyach, Strength. May we all be strengthened to finish this tractate, Tractate Tainus, tonight, and to begin and finish many more tractates in the future. What a wonderful time to be together, studying as we make a SIYUM on Tainus. Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us as we gather to celebrate together a SIYUM? Paula in Chicago, Pauline in Arkansas, Carolyn in Raleigh, Sharon in Lebanon, Patrice in Utah, Melissa in Great Neck, Yehudit in Florence, South Carolina, congratulating all who are making a SIYUM. John in Sedona, Nancy in North Carolina, Tom says shalom, James in Indianapolis, Paula, haunting and beautiful, referring to the music, I think. Stephen in New Hampshire, Bill in Missouri, Bella in Florida, Lucy in Minnesota, Paul in the Great Northwest, Miriam in Colorado, Ryan in Jacksonville, and Samicha, I don't want to get your name wrong, in Warsaw, welcome. Tom making a L'chaim, John ready in Maine. Tom, sorry about the Giants. Yeah, right? Was it really worth missing a day of Daf Yomi together to go see our New York Giants get crushed yesterday? But hey, I was with friends. My son was there. It was beautiful. It was beautiful in that regard. Paula, yes, does love the music. Sam in Virginia. And over on the YouTube side, John on YouTube because Facebook was choppy. What can I say? Help us build the AT app. I don't want to, I've been saying it every day. It's the month. It's our annual campaign is a month long. We do that so that we can call as many people personally as possible. But yes, it's our annual campaign. All donations doubled. Help us build the AT app. Donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. Today's episode of AT Daily sponsored by Josh and Yafa Morvich. In honor of what? The health of mishpacha, right? And Josh is so generous and sweet. He doesn't say the health of our mishpacha. He says the health of mishpacha. So on the simple level, that means, okay, so everybody's relatives, everybody's family and relatives should be healthy. But I think Josh is a very deep guy. He's going even a little deeper. And what he's saying is, of course, we should all pray for and have physical health, but we should also have spiritually healthy families. We should cherish each other, support each other, and work on the koach, on the strength of the family. It doesn't happen naturally. It happens because we invest in the relationships of our family. Josh, may you and Yaf and all your children be showered in blessings even more than your ample imagination could conceive. And we say Amen. Thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. All right, it's a double daf because I was at that pathetic excuse for a Giants game yesterday. Was interesting to see SoFi Stadium. What does $2 billion or I don't even know how many billions of dollars buy? That stadium was pretty cool. the video screen, the video ring, 350 feet long. I mean, amazing, right? It's amazing what technology could do. May it be harnessed for good. All the beautiful technological marvels of our age, may they be harnessed for good. We have a double daf. We're doing pages 30 and 31 here in Tractate Tinus to complete chapter 4 and to complete the tractate. I've got some maker's marks so we can make a l'chaim. Nina will come in at the end of class. We can make a l'chaim together. And so I hope you have something around for that l'chaim. All right, this chapter 4, generally speaking, this sort of how the sages declared fasts. The other chapters were really in response to imminent dangers and calamities. This chapter 4, more about commemorating, in a sad way, the tragedies of our past. And so we have the fast during the year commemorating the destruction of the temple, not just the day, the 9th of Av, on which it was actually destroyed, but also the 17th of Tammuz, when they breached the walls of Jerusalem and the invaders came surging through, and when the siege of Jerusalem started, that's the 10th of Teves, which we're in right now. But it's a minor fast, so we'll be fasting tomorrow. You can get up before there's any light in the sky and have a little breakfast. And then it's a wintertime fast, so the daylight hours are relatively short in the northern hemisphere. If you're fasting in the southern hemisphere, 10th of Teves, not so easy. Okay, but the sages don't want to end the tractate on such a sad note. So just as the Mishna that we're discussing ended on a positive note, so does the Gemara here at the end of the chapter. And we'll be talking about Tu B'Av and the Hora at the end of times, the dance of the righteous, which is a very beautiful image to end on. All right, let's get into it. We're picking this up a few paragraphs into it on the A side of page 30. The Mishnah taught on the eve, right, so the afternoon before of the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, a person may not eat 2 cooked dishes in one meal. And Rav Yehuda said they taught that one may not partake of a meal with 2 dishes only from 6 hours of the day and onward, from noon and onward. But from 6 hours and earlier, like breakfast, you could have a meal with 2 cooked dishes, but not in the afternoon, right? We're getting into that mourning mindset, mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-G, like in a state of mourning, as we approach the 9th of Av. And so even the final meal, you got to eat so that you'll have the strength to complete that 25-hour fast of Tisha B'Av. But that final meal shouldn't feel like some kind of a celebratory meal. The last meal before Yom Kippur, by contrast, you should eat with relish, right? That should be a nice meal. And one who sort of has a really nice meal on the 9th of Tishrei, the day before Yom Kippur, right before that fast, gets as much credit, according to our sages, as he does for fasting all of Yom Kippur. But the final meal before Tisha B'Av is a sad meal. Should be only 1 cooked dish. And as we'll see, no wine, no meat, etc. So, and Rav Yehuda also said they taught that it is prohibited to eat 2 dishes only in the final meal before beginning the fast. However, in a non-concluding meal, it is permitted to eat 2 cooked dishes. Right? So if you had 2 meals in the afternoon, you could eat 2 cooked dishes as long as the final meal before the fast begins, you don't. And the Gemara comments, and both of these rulings are intended as a leniency, and it is necessary for Rav Yehuda to state them both. For had he taught us that this law is referring only to the concluding meal, I would have said that this applies even from 6 hours and earlier, that the penultimate meal before noon. And had he taught us only that it is prohibited to eat 2 dishes from 6 hours and onward, I would have said that this applies even to a meal by which he does not stop eating. And Rav Yehuda therefore teaches us that it applies only to the concluding meal. Where did the law come out on this question? On the eve of the 9th of Av, on the afternoon before it gets dark. It is prohibited to eat meat or drink wine during the last meal before the fast, if that meal is taken after midday. During the meal, it is also prohibited to eat 2 cooked dishes. It is even customary to refrain from eating salted meat, fowl, and fish, and from drinking wine that has not yet fermented properly. If a single dish was cooked in 2 separate pots, the food is considered 2 cooked dishes. It is proper to act stringently and to refrain from eating even 2 foods cooked in the same pot, unless those 2 foods are regularly cooked in the same pot. Food that was cooked but could have been eaten raw is defined as a cooked dish for the purpose of this law. Some add that for this prohibition, there is no difference between boiling and roasting. So it's a very simple meal that we eat before Tisha B'Av. The sages, and we skip a few paragraphs, the sages taught all mitzvahs practiced by a mourner are likewise practiced on the 9th of Av. And so, right, the 9th of Av, the saddest day in the Jewish calendar, we're remembering the destruction of not one but both of the holy temples, as well as a number of other disasters and calamities that all occurred on that day. And so we don't just fast, we really want to feel like mourners. We want to get into the mindset of a mourner. We want to feel the loss of the temples. That's where we want to get to. And so it is prohibited to engage in eating and in drinking, and also in smearing oil on one's body, and in wearing shoes, and in conjugal relations between husband and wife. And it is prohibited to read from the Torah, from the prophets, and from the writings, right? The whole Hebrew Bible. It's also prohibited to study from the Mishna, and from the Gemara, and from Midrash, and from collections of halachot, laws, and from collections of agadot, right? The more story-oriented passages of the Talmud. However, one may read from a place in the Bible that he is unaccustomed to reading, as it will be difficult for him, and he will not derive as much pleasure from it. And he may likewise study from a place of the Talmud that he is unaccustomed to study. And one may read from the book of Lamentations, from the book of Job, and from the evil matters in the book of Jeremiah, i.e. his prophecies of doom. And school children interrupt their studies for the day because it is stated, the precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. And in fact, we don't learn any Torah on that day, not even the ones that, where it says that you might be able to read passages you're unfamiliar with since you will derive less pleasure from them. The whole concept here is, Bible study, Torah study, or from the writings and the prophets is thought to give us joy, is understood to give us joy. We don't want to do anything that gives us joy on Tisha B'Av, and that's why it's prohibited to do that kind of learning. And in fact, there's no exception for that. You don't learn Torah. There's parts of the Torah, of course, that are included in the liturgy of the day. Okay, so you do the liturgy of the day, but you don't engage in Torah study. And Rabbi Yehuda said, one may not even read from a place of the Bible that he's unaccustomed to reading, nor may one study from a place of the Talmud that he's unaccustomed to study. However, one may read from Job and Lamentations and the evil matters of Jeremiah. And school children do interrupt their studies on that day because it is stated, the precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. So we don't want to give that joy to the heart. The Mishnah taught that one may neither eat meat nor drink wine on Tisha B'Av, and a Tana taught in the Tosefta. However, one may eat heavily salted meat and drink wine from his press. In other words, wine that has not finished fermenting, because that's not really wine yet. And the Gemara inquires, with regard to salted meat, how long must this meat remain in salt before it is permitted? And Rav Chanana Bar Kahana said, in the name of Shmuel, as long as it is like peace offerings, which could be eaten for 2 days and 1 night, after they were sacrificed. After this time is passed, it is no longer called meat. Therefore, if it was salted for longer than this, it may be eaten on the eve of the 9th of Av. In other words, you don't eat fresh roasted meat, you don't make a meat, and you don't even have leftovers from the day before. But, if you're talking about meat that was cooked days earlier and it's just a leftover, okay, so no one's getting so much joy from that. That could be eaten at that final meal. And the Gemara asks, and with regard to wine from his press, right? So you can't drink wine at the final meal before Tisha B'Av, But if it's sort of like the wine from the wine press that hasn't really become wine yet, it's in the process of becoming wine, can you drink that? As long as it is still fermenting. And a Tana taught in a Baraisa, wine that is fermenting does not have a problem with regard to exposed liquids, as there is no concern that a snake will leave its venom in that wine. The sages teach elsewhere that if you had a glass of water standing on the counter, unwatched, unsupervised for a certain amount of time, you shouldn't drink it because there was the fear that a snake could come along and deposit venom in that water, or some enemy of yours. But with wine that's still fermenting, we don't have that issue. Why? Because the snake is going to be repulsed by wine that is still in the process of fermenting. It's too warm and alcoholic, and snakes don't like that. And how long is its fermenting period? 3 days from the time that the grapes were pressed. And Rav Yehuda said that Rav said this was the custom of Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Eli. On the eve of Tisha B'Av, near the evening, they would bring him stale bread with salt, and he would sit between the oven and the stove, which was considered the least respectable place in the house. And he would eat bread and drink a jug of water with it, and in doing so, he would resemble one whose deceased relative is laid out unburied before him, right? So he resembles somebody who's just not thinking of himself at all, isn't going to get any pleasure from his food, eating stale bread and salt, sitting on the floor, in the most disreputable place in his house, as it were. And you're just trying to get into that mindset of being a mourner whose close relative just died. That's the kind of mindset you want to achieve during Tisha B'Av, even though what we're mourning is the loss of the Holy Temple that's been gone these 2,000 years. Yes, you want to achieve that kind of a sadness. We learned in a Mishna there, in a place where people were accustomed to perform labor on the 9th of Av, because Tisha B'Av is not a festival, right? We want to get into this state of sadness, and we're fasting, but this is not some kind of a festival mandated by the Torah. So why would we desist from working on that day? I mean, it's difficult to work when you're not eating, but do you need to desist from work? And basically, it depends on the custom of the place where you are. In a place where people were accustomed to perform labor on Tisha B'Av, one performs labor. In a place where people were accustomed not to perform labor, one does not perform labor. And in all places, Torah scholars are idle and do not perform labor on the 9th of Av. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, with regard to Tisha B'Av, a person should always conduct himself like a Torah scholar and refrain from performing labor. And this is also taught in a Baraisa. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, a person should always conduct himself as a Torah scholar so that he will feel the hardship of the fast. So if you can get the day off from work on Tisha B'Av, that's definitely the way that you should handle it. And it is taught in another Baraisa that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, whoever eats and drinks on Tisha B'Av, although the prohibition was instituted by the prophets as opposed to by God in the Torah, it came later, but it is as though he eats and drinks on Yom Kippur. It's as bad as eating and drinking on Yom Kippur. And Rabbi Akiva says, whoever performs labor on the 9th of Av never sees a sign of blessing from that work. It's counterproductive to do any work on Tisha B'Av. Even if you could say halakhically it's permitted, which is we could see is very questionable, you won't benefit from it, so you might as well desist from working on that day. We're in the third paragraph from the top of the B side of 30. And the sages say, whoever performs labor on Tisha B'Av and does not mourn for Jerusalem will not see her future joy. As it is stated, Isaiah 66:10, rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad with her, all who love her. Rejoice for joy with her, all who mourn for her. And from here it is stated, whoever mourns for Jerusalem will merit and see her future joy. And whoever does not mourn for Jerusalem will not see her future joy. Right? So if Jerusalem is something you don't care about, right, then it's like you're distancing yourself from the Jewish people. You don't have to live in Jerusalem to be a Jew, but you have to care about Jerusalem to be Jewish, right? To be a Jew. And obviously, everyone else is welcome to care about Jerusalem and to mourn for the loss of the great ancient Jerusalem that was when the temple stood there. And if that's something that you mourn its loss and long to see it restored, then you will merit to see it restored, right? At the time of the resurrection of the dead, after Mashiach comes. Where am I? And this is also taught in a Baraisa. Whoever eats meat or drinks wine in the meal before the 9th of Av, when this is prohibited, about him, the verse states, and whose iniquities are upon their bones, because the terror of the mighty was in the land of the living. Ezekiel 32:27. The Mishnah taught, the Mishnah that it was a long Mishnah at the beginning of chapter 4, and so we're still sort of analyzing the parts of the Mishnah. The Mishnah taught Rabbi Yehuda obligates one to overturn the bed, but the rabbis did not agree with him. Overturn the bed meaning that a mourner, according to Rabbi Yehuda, should overturn the bed. He should sleep on the floor rather than in his bed as a sign of mourning and, tremendous sadness in the loss of the close relative. And likewise on Tisha B'Av as a sign of that equal kind of pain because of the loss of the temple. So Rabbi Yehuda obligates one to overturn the bed. But the rabbis did not agree with him. It is taught in a Baraisa that the rabbi said to Rabbi Yehuda, according to your statement, pregnant women and nursing women who cannot sleep on the floor, what will become of them? Rabbi Yehuda said to the rabbis, I too spoke only with regard to those who are able. I would not obligate pregnant women and nursing women to sleep on the floor on Tisha B'Av. But everyone who's not a pregnant woman or a nursing woman could sleep on the floor, according to Rabbi Yehuda. This is also taught in another Baraisa. Rabbi Yehuda concedes to the rabbis with regard to one who is unable to sleep on the floor, and the rabbis concede to Rabbi Yehuda with regard to one who is able to do so. And the Gemara asks, if so, what is the practical difference between them? The Gemara explains the practical difference between them is the status of other beds, as it is taught in a Baraisa. When the rabbi said that a mourner is required to overturn the bed, they meant that he overturns not only his own bed, but also that he must overturn all the beds in the house. And Rabbi Yehuda, no one in the house can sleep in a bed at that time. All the beds in the house. And Rabbi Yehuda maintains that one must likewise overturn all the beds of one's house on the 9th of Av. And Rav has said the law is in accordance with the opinion of the Tana of our Mishnah. And the rabbis did not concede to Rabbi Yehuda at all, even with regard to one who was able. Therefore, there is no requirement to overturn one's bed on Tisha B'Av. The Mishnah taught that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said there were no days. Now we move into, we spent the whole tractate talking about the laws of public fasts, decreed in the face of calamities and dangers and drought and famine and invading armies and plagues. So sad. Let's go out on a positive note. So the Mishnah totally switches course, and so does the Gemara now. The Mishnah taught that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, we just were talking about Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, so now another teaching of Shimon ben Gamliel, there were no days as happy for the Jewish people as Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, 6 days after Tisha B'Av, and as Yom Kippur, the two happiest days of the year, according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av. And the Gemara asks, granted, Yom Kippur is a day of joy because it has the elements of pardon and forgiveness, and moreover, it is the day on which the last pair of tablets were given. The second set of commandments were given on Yom Kippur, and it's a day that God established when we can clear the slate, we can atone for our sins, at least our sins against God, and he will forgive us. Of course, that's a day of joy. However, what is the special joy of the 15th of Av, of Tu B'Av? And Rav Yehuda said that Shmuel said this was the day on which, so this was just like Tisha B'Av and the 10th of Teves and the 17th of Tammuz, throughout history had a lot of terrible things happen on that same date in the calendar. On Tu B'Av, a lot of great things happened to the Jewish people in different times in history on that date. So what is the special joy of Tu B'Av? Rav Yehuda said that Shmuel said this was the day on which the members of the different tribes were permitted to enter one another's tribe by intermarriage. Right? It was initially prohibited to intermarry between the tribes. So the tribe of Judah, the men of the tribe of Judah would marry women from the tribe of Judah, and the men of Shimon would marry women from Shimon, and the men of Levi would marry women from Levi. But eventually it was decreed that no, the members of the tribes could intermarry with one another. They're all Jews. Why would there be such a prohibition? Recall that when the children of Israel entered the promised land, it was settled by tribe. There were areas of Israel that belonged to one tribe or another, and all of the families in that tribal area received the family portions of land. Now, if they start intermarrying, so then somebody's parents die, he inherits land, but he might be a Benjamite who's going to be inheriting land from a Judahite, right, etc. And it was going to become complicated. So for a long time, there was no intermarriage between the tribes, so as to keep each plot of land within the portion of the tribe that originally inherited it. This law was instituted by the Torah in the wake of a complaint by the relatives of the daughters of Zelophehad, the 5 daughters who died without a brother to inherit the land of their father. And then it said, well, they will inherit the portion of their father, but they should marry men of their tribe so that that land will stay. It'll pass to the daughters, but stay within the tribe. And the relatives of the daughters of Zelophehad were worried that if these women married men from other tribes, the inheritance of Zelophehad would be lost from his tribe. So what did they expound in support of their conclusion that this law was no longer in effect sometime later in Jewish history? The verse states, Numbers 36:5, "This is the matter that the Lord has commanded concerning the daughters of Zelophehad, and saying, let them marry whom they think best, only into the family of the tribe of their father shall they marry." So they derive from the verse that this matter shall be practiced only in this generation, when the land of Israel was divided among the tribes. But afterward, in later generations, members of different tribes were permitted to marry each other. And on the day that this barrier separating the tribes was removed, the sages established a permanent day of rejoicing, Tu B'Av. And now you can see why Tu B'Av is also kind of the Jewish Valentine's Day, when the women would go out in white, borrowing each other's clothes so you couldn't tell the difference between rich and poor. And men, could look at the women dancing in the fields, as it were, and think to themselves, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a woman who's beautiful, the whole package, not just beautiful of appearance, but a beautiful soul, beautiful spirituality, beautiful deeds, beautiful family, etc. And Rav Yosef said that Rav Nachman said, Tu B'Av was the day on which the tribe of Benjamin was permitted to enter the congregation of the Jewish people. After the tragic incident at Gibeah, for which the tribe of Benjamin was blamed, the other tribes ostracized them. Yeah, not going to go into the story of what happened at Gibeah, but it was like an ugly, ugly episode. And it ended up tarring, really smearing the name of the whole Benjamite tribe. And for a long time, the other 11 tribes would not marry a Benjamite. Eventually, the people of that generation passed on, and the Benjamites were welcomed back into the community of the Jews for the purposes of marriage. So after that tragic incident, for which the tribe of Benjamin was blamed, the other tribes ostracized them, and they took an oath to prohibit themselves from marrying a member of the tribe of Benjamin. As it is stated, Judges 21:1, and the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, saying, none of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin, to the tribe of Benjamin, as a wife. And the Gemara asks, what did they expound that enabled them to dissolve this oath and to move past that restriction? And Rav said they understood the verse literally. As it states, none of us. It doesn't say none of our children. i.e. the oath applied only to the generation that took the oath, not to their descendants. Rabbi Bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, was the day on which the deaths of the Jews in the wilderness ceased. The entire generation that had left Egypt passed away. As the Master said, after the sin of the spies, on account of which the Jews of that generation were sentenced to die in the wilderness, as long as the death of the Jews in the wilderness had not ceased, God's speech did not come to Moses. As it is stated, Deuteronomy 2:16 through 17, and it came to pass, when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, that the Lord spoke to me, saying, and this indicates that only then, after the last member of that generation had died, was God's speech delivered to me, i.e. Moses, but not beforehand. When the Jews realized that the decree that God would not speak to Moses had been lifted, they established that day as a permanent day of rejoicing. Remember, God cursed all that generation that came out of Egypt and who cried because it's going to be too much for us to enter the promised land. And God said, okay, well, you will not enter the promised land. You'll die out here in the wilderness and your children will enter. And so we have a tradition that every year on the anniversary of that day, which was what? Tisha B'Av, right? The 9th of Av. That night, the people who were alive at that time would dig a grave for themselves and lie down in it. And some percentage of them would not wake up the next day. And we do have a tradition, I'm pretty sure somewhere there's a midrash that said, and there was a last group, the ones that had not died on that night or any other time during the year for those, 37 years, because, there were 2 years before that sentence. And then there were a few that didn't die out there in the wilderness, and they went to bed that night expecting, well, we're the only ones left. That's it. We're going to die tonight. And some of them woke up the next day, and it was like, for whatever reason, perhaps their teshuvah, their atonement had been complete. Like some of them survived. According to this interpretation here, none of them survived. They all died out. But that was over on Tu B'Av, right? That it was done, and so the prophecy came back to Moses at that point, or a few of them survived and they realized that it's over. There's no more of that. Ula said Tu B'Av was the day on which King Hoshea, the son of Elah, canceled the guards that Jeroboam, the son of Nevat, placed on the roads so that the Jews would not ascend to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage festivals, right? From the northern kingdom, they had shut down the border, as it were, so that the Jews in the northern kingdom of Israel could no longer go to Jerusalem to make pilgrimages because it was politically, not very, didn't help them out. That now that they have a whole new king establishing a whole new religion, basically, and calling it Judaism, after the kingdom split in two, after Solomon died. But at a certain point, they had a king in the north who said, enough, if the Jews want to go down to Jerusalem, we're going to let them go down. It's still a separate country, but we'll let them go to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage. And Hoshea, the son of Elah, said that they may ascend to wherever they wish, i.e. they may go to Jerusalem or Bethel or Dan. Rav Matanis said, now we're on page 31a, the last page, and it's a short page. Rav Matanis said there was an additional salvation on this day, on Tu B'Av, as it was the day that the slain of Beitar were brought to burial several years after the battle at Beitar. We're going to learn about that at Tractate Gittin. But for now, this was a battle during the Bar Kokhba revolt in about the year 135 of the Common Era, when, the Jews just got crushed by Rome. That's when they totally plowed over Jerusalem, salted the earth, and really made, the promised land into a wasteland where it would remain basically a wasteland until the modern state of Israel came in and started irrigating everything and bringing the land back to life. Well, there was a huge battle at Beitar, and the Romans didn't even allow the Jews to bury their dead. And Rav Matanis said, on the same day that the slain of Beitar were finally brought to burial, and it was on Tu B'Av, they instituted the blessing about God when we say, who is good and does good. And they started saying that at Yavne, right? The Sanhedrin had been recomposed out of Jerusalem and was at Yavne and was still there, 60, 70 years later. who is good and who does good. Who is good, thanking God that the corpses did not decompose while awaiting burial, and who does good, thanking God that they were ultimately brought to burial. It is Rabbah and Rav Yosef who both say the Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, was the day on which they stopped chopping down trees for the arrangement of wood that burned on the altar, as it is taught in a Baraisa. In other words, you need firewood for the daily offerings in the temple when the temple is standing. But on the 15th of Av, by then they had sort of built up the wood pile inside the temple. They would have enough wood to get them through till the next season of cutting down wood for the altar. So on the 15th of Av, there's no more trees being chopped down. It's sort of like a reprieve for the trees. Right, so Rav and Rav Yosef both say on Tu B'Av, that's the day they stopped chopping down trees for the arrangement of wood that burned on the altar, as it is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Eliezer the Great says, from the 15th of Av onward, the strength of the sun grows weaker, and from this day they would not cut additional wood for the arrangement, as they would not be properly dry, and they would therefore be unfit for use in the temple. You want that wood really, you chop down a tree, it's going to have to dry out before it can be burned on the altar. And now that we're already in the waning days of summer, as it were, it's not going to be as hot. The wood won't have time to properly dry and be used that year. Rav Menashe said, and they call the 15th of Av the day of the breaking of the scythe. Now, that's one of those words you read but don't use in conversation. I think that's how you pronounce a scythe, right? Scythe, like what the angel of death carries around for the Grim Reaper, right? A scythe. As from this date onward, no more trees were cut down, and therefore it was a celebration for the trees. And the Gemara adds, from the 15th of Av onward, when the days begin to shorten, one who adds to his nightly Torah study will add years to his life, and he who does not add will be gathered. And the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase, he will be gathered? And Rav Yosef said, it means that his mother will bury him, as he will be gathered to his grave. In other words, the nights start getting longer, so you should have more Torah study. Since people study Torah at night, you should add to your Torah study now that the night is getting longer, and use your time properly. New subject. The Mishna taught, as on them, right, on this day, Tu B'Av, and on Yom Kippur, I guess, but certainly on Tu B'Av, as on them, the daughters of Jerusalem would go out in white clothes. And on Tu B'Av, they would go out to the vineyards and dance. And the sages taught this tradition in greater detail. The daughter of the king borrows white garments from the daughter of the high priest. The daughter of the high priest borrows from the daughter of the deputy high priest. The daughter of the deputy high priest borrows from the daughter of the priest anointed for war. In other words, the priest who would read verses of Torah and address the army as they prepared for battle. And the daughter of the priest anointed for war borrows from the daughter of a common priest. And all the Jewish people borrow from each other. Right? In other words, the people who are powerful their daughters borrow clothes from people who are less wealthy and less powerful. Because everyone is going to go out dressed the same, and we're going to remove the status symbols of the clothing. Everybody's just wearing simple white garments, and nobody's wearing their own white garments. And why would they all borrow garments? They did so as not to embarrass one who did not have her own white garments. Everyone's in borrowed garments. And the Mishnah further taught, all the garments that the women borrowed require immersion, as those who previously wore them might have been ritually impure. And Rabbi Lazar says, even if the garments were folded and placed in a box, kufsa, an indication that they had not been touched for a long time, nevertheless, they require ritual immersion before being worn. Excuse me, I'm almost done. So we're about to have our SIYUM. If you got questions or comments, get them in. The Mishnah also stated that the daughters of the Jewish people would go out and dance in the vineyards. Atana taught one who did not have a wife would turn to there to find one. And it is taught that those women of distinguished lineage among them would say, young man, lift up your eyes and see what you choose for a wife. And the sages taught this practice in greater detail in the Baraisa. What would the beautiful women among them say? Set your eyes towards beauty, as a wife is only for her beauty. But what would those of distinguished lineage among them say? Set your eyes toward family, as a wife is only for children, and the children of a wife from a distinguished family will inherit her lineage. And what would the less attractive ones among them say? Acquire your purchase for the sake of heaven, provided that you adorn us with gold and jewelry after our marriage to beautify us. And the tractate concludes with a statement related to the topic of dancing. A final word of the tractate. Ula of the city of Bir'ah said that Rabbi Elazar said, in the future, at the end of days, the Holy One, blessed be He, will arrange a dance of the righteous. And He will be sitting among them in the Garden of Eden, and each and every one of the righteous will point to God with his finger, as it is stated, and it shall be said on that day, Isaiah 25:9, behold, this is our God, for whom we waited, that He might save us. This is the Lord, for whom we waited. We will be glad and rejoice in His salvation. Right? On that day, when the Messiah comes and the end of days is here, and the righteous are dancing and rejoicing in the presence of the Lord will no longer be hidden as the Lord's presence is hidden in our world today. And so everyone will be able to say, there's God. This is God. Now we're in God. God won't be like, some kind of old man with a beard in one place. But the presence of the Lord will be completely revealed. It won't be hidden anymore, and everyone will be able to say, and that's why we learn elsewhere on that day, the knowledge of the Lord will fill the earth as water fills the sea. Everyone will be able to say, there's God. Oh my gosh. And God will be revealed so that every righteous individual will be able to say, this is our God, as though they were pointing at Him with a finger. And that concludes our journey through the tractate. And so we immediately go to the Hadran that we say whenever we finish a tractate. We shall return to you, tractate Tinus, and your glory is upon us. Our thoughts are upon you, tractate Tinus, and your thoughts are upon us. We will not be forgotten from you, tractate Tinus, and you will not be forgotten from us, neither in this world nor in the world to come. We say that one 3 times. We shall return to you, tractate Tinus, and your glory is upon us. Our thoughts are upon you, tractate Tinus, and your thoughts are upon us. We will not be forgotten from you, tractate Tinus, and you will not be forgotten from us, neither in this world nor in the world to come. We will return to you, tractate Tinus, and your glory is upon us. Our thoughts are upon you, tractate Tinus, and your thoughts are upon us. We will not be forgotten from you, tractate Tinus, and you will not be forgotten from us, neither in this world nor in the world to come. May it be your will, Lord, our God and God of our ancestors, that your Torah will be our avocation in this world and will accompany us to the world to come. Chanina bar Papa, Ramay bar Papa, Nachman bar Papa, Achai bar Papa, Abba Mari bar Papa, Rafram bar Papa, Rakshish bar Papa, Surcha bar Papa, Ada bar Papa, Daru bar Papa, the 10 sons of Rav bar Papa, who are all sages themselves. Please, Lord our God, make the words of your Torah sweet in our mouths and in the mouths of our people, the house of Israel, so that we, our descendants, and their descendants, and the descendants of your people, the house of Israel, may all know your name and study your Torah, lishma, for its own sake. Your command. Just had a quick freeze, so I'm just giving a pause for the unfreeze. Okay. Your commandments make me wiser than my enemies, for they are ever with me. Let my heart be undivided in your statutes, in order that I may not be put to shame. I will never forget your precepts, for through them you have quickened me. Blessed are you, O Lord. Teach me your statutes. Amen, amen, amen. Selah, forever. We give thanks before you, Lord, our God and God of our ancestors, that you have placed our lot among those who sit in the study hall, and that you have not given us our portion among those who sit idly on street corners. We rise early and they rise early. We rise early to pursue matters of Torah. They rise early to pursue frivolous matters. We reward and they toil and do not receive a reward. We run and they run. We run to the life of the world to come, and they run to the pit of destruction, as it is stated. But you, God, will bring them down into the pit of destruction. Men of blood and deceit shall not live out half their days. But as for me, I will trust in you. I'm almost done with the Hadran that we say whenever we complete a tractate. May it be your will, Lord my God, just as you have assisted me in completing tractate Tinus, So assist me to begin other tractates and books and conclude them, and to learn and to teach, to observe and to perform and to fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. And may the merit of all the Tanaim and Amoraim and Torah scholars stand for me and my descendants, so that the Torah will not move from my mouth and from the mouths of my descendants and the descendants of my descendants forever. And may the verse, when you walk, it shall lead you. When you lie down, it shall watch over you. And when you awaken, it shall talk with you, be fulfilled in me. For in the Torah your days shall be multiplied, and the years of your life shall be increased. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left are riches and honor. May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace. And we say, Amen. Mazel tov, all who are completing tractate Tainus. And because we complete a tractate, we instantly just read the first few words of the next tractate, which is tractate Megillah, the laws of Purim and public Torah readings. Where is it? Megillah. Right, just the first sentence of Tractate Megillah, Mishnah number 1. The Megillah is read on the 11th, on the 12th, on the 13th, on the 14th, or on the 15th of the month of Adar, not earlier and not later. How is that possible? We'll learn tomorrow. Okay. Time to make a l'chaim. And then I see some questions are coming, but let's make the l'chaim. Okay. Boom. All right. What are you drinking as we make a l'chaim together? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol nehi b'divaro. Very nice. We love making a l'chaim with bourbon. All right. Wait, I hear footsteps. Yay, it's Nina.
I'm going to answer questions first.
No. Let's make the. We just finished. Let's make the SIYUM. Okay. Then we'll do some questions. I was afraid you got hung up, so I made my l'chaim, but you can make yours.
Okay.
There you are.
Thank you.
She's the birthday girl.
L'chaim.
Amen. Amen.
We've been together almost 25 years.
Nobody was counting.
And you know I don't like it when you tell people it's my birthday.
Okay, it's not like we're in a restaurant and all the waiters are going to gather around the table and sing happy birthday.
Anyway, I know.
Nina's 29 years old today. So you can wish her a happy birthday. All right. And then we always want to have another reason to make a bracha. So we've got some graham crackers.
So is it a thing that you always do it on a mazonos, on a grain? Okay.
Yeah, not exactly on the mazonos. Cool. One of the 7 species that characterize the beauty and fecundity of the land of Israel.
Is pomegranate one of those? We could
Yes.
do pomegranate. We could have done that.
I guess so.
Yeah. Anyway.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei mazonos.
Amen.
It's not my first tractate, so I know to only have a few crumbs.
Right.
So I can now
You're on camera.
keep talking. Not have food coming out of my mouth.
Rookie mistake.
All right. Oh, and hold on. Let me get the mic over here so that it's good for you too, honey.
So first of all, thank you so much to everybody who has contributed to our fundraiser, which is many, if not most of you. So thank you for your generosity. Thank you for helping us do what we do and help Sal keep this going. And you probably are sick of hearing about the app, so we know that there's an app coming. God willing, we're gonna be getting that to you in the new year. But just thank you so much for being here, for your comments, for your heart, for your creating this great community, and for your financial support of our fundraiser. I think we're at like 58%, so we're chugging along. And we couldn't have done it without you.
Amen. Thank you, AT community. All right, honey, you can help me answer some questions. Bill, what is the limit for 2 dishes usually made in the same pot? Is it whether the cook in question generally makes them together or the general public? Example, Einstein famously made his hard-boiled eggs in the same pot in which he cooks soups and noodles. That's not a general practice, so could Einstein still do that on the day, or is he banned because it's his habit to cook them together? Bill has become a Talmudist.
Bill is beyond a Talmudist because you come up with the most amazing questions.
That's a perfect Talmudical question.
Yeah.
What do we usually have in the meal before? It's hard-boiled eggs, right? Isn't that the thing?
Yeah, like burnt something or other and hard-boiled eggs sitting on the floor. Yeah.
It's like, it's not a happy
You're supposed
meal.
to like dip it in ashes. That's
Dipped
what it
in
is.
ashes.
Yeah.
The hard-boiled egg dipped in ashes. Very simple meal, bread, eggs, a few rice, that kind of. But you wouldn't have rice and eggs, I guess.
I just remember dipping the eggs in the ash. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom, Sal, does the Talmud deal with the order of Haftorahs leading into and out of Tisha B'Av, either 3 Haftorot of rebuke before and the 7 Haftorahs of consolation after? Well, we didn't encounter that here in Tainus, where we did talk quite a bit about Tisha B'Av, but I'm sure that's mentioned elsewhere, so I'm not sure when we do that. It might be in tractate Megillah, because Megillah is all about, reading the scroll of Esther on Purim. And then once they establish that, since that's like the primary thing that we do, we send gifts, etc. But the main thing is the public reading. And so there's going to be a lot of discussion of other public readings and the rules of public readings of Torah. So perhaps it will come up in tractate Megillah. I don't remember offhand. Sharon, I am fascinated with the book of Eicha, Lamentations, and I'm one of the chanters of the Megillah in my shul, in her synagogue. So I start studying it weeks in advance.
Wow.
If you enjoy the study of the book of Lamentations, is it still permitted?
Wow.
That's a really good question. Since like they said, that one of the things that would lead to pleasure is knowing it well, so you'd always find something new in it.
Okay.
In the same way that I enjoy the Akedah. It's a very difficult passage to read about the binding of Isaac, but I've read it so many times. Yeah. I always learn something new. So, but I think that since you're doing your duty, you should keep doing it. And the fact that you get something out of it, that you learn from it, doesn't change the fact that you're doing what your shul needs.
You're not going to stop doing it for that reason. Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Obviously ask your rabbi, not me. But it seems to me like you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Lucy, I am realizing that the hardship of the fast may create empathy, hence helpful action, hopefully. And it can also increase our awareness of our own contribution to the problem fasted about, and thus lead to repentance. I also was struck by the idea that feeling the hardship of fasting can open one to joy when restoration occurs.
Absolutely.
Yes, so yes, and yes. I agree with all your insights. Very well put, Lucy. And finally, Tom, also, where does the Talmud deal with our being permitted to wear talis and tefillin at Mincha on Tisha B'Av? Right, so we don't put them on in the morning, the prayer shawl and the tefillin, but we do it in the afternoon because we have a daily obligation to do it. And we've seen elsewhere that the restrict, and it's like, certain Torah passages that are related to the liturgy of Tisha B'Av, we read them, but we do so in the afternoon. And if you must do some work on Tisha B'Av, you should do it in the afternoon and not in the morning. And sort of like some of the stringencies of Tisha B'Av are relaxed in the afternoon. And so tefillin gives glory and light and pleasure. We delay that until the afternoon.
It's so wild that we're finishing this tractate right when we're about to start a fast.
Yes.
So if you are fasting tomorrow, here's my brilliant tip if you don't already know it. And we got to get some Gatorade tonight. I forgot to stock up. But if you drink Gatorade or vitamin water, something with electrolytes, it really helps prevent thirst. And this is also probably the easiest fast because it ends at like 5:30 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, may it be an easy fast to everybody fasting.
Amen. I think Bill is responding to the fact that I always say God willing when I'm talking about anything that's going to happen in the future. Or, in a more like observant crowd, I'll say Besras Hashem or Im Yirtzeh Hashem. And we just never tend to speak about the future like something's going to happen because you don't know if it's going to happen. It's God willing it's going to happen. And so Bill says the AT app motto should be, the good Lord willing and the creek don't rise. Is that a song? It sounds like a song.
I think it's an expression. I don't know. I've definitely heard
Maybe
that
it's
before.
just an expression, yeah. Annie says happy birthday, Nina. Miriam
Thank
says happy
you.
birthday,
Thank you,
Nina.
thank you.
Thomas and Charles and John Boltman, happy 29th birthday, Nina. And Carolyn, a lot of people are wishing you happy
Thank
birthday. And they
you.
all
Thank
feel
you,
like they're your
everybody.
family. That's what they're saying.
Yeah. We are all one big AT family.
We are one big AT family. John says, I'm sipping moonshine.
Oh, what does that mean?
Seriously, I only use this for medicinal purposes. I have a really bad cold.
Oh.
John
May
is
you be
having
healed.
rum. I was going to bring the sipping rum, but I
Oh,
know you're not the
yeah.
biggest fan,
Yeah, but it's good though. Yeah.
it's so
Next time,
good.
Next to you, maybe.
Just as we discovered that there's a difference between tequila and sipping tequila, so too there's rum and sipping rum. When we were in Costa Rica, we got some beautiful Centenario aged rum. It's so good. Sam has some Old House Premium Double Oak Straight Corn Whiskey. Melissa has Kedem Grape Juice. Beautiful. Carolyn's having coffee. Sharon's having bourbon and Israeli espresso liqueur. Bill's having locally made pear liqueur. I love
sounds good.
supporting your local anything. Farmer, vintner, moonshiner, whatever it is. All right. Well, that's about it. Any reflections on Tractate Tinus?
It went by fast.
It did go by fast. And remember that there were some beautiful things. Like, if you ever in the future you think, I feel like, learning a little Gemara, which volume should I pick up? You can always pick up Tinus because there were so many great Agadata, right? So many great stories
and
these
characters
great
and Honi the
digressions of the
Circle
sages.
Maker and all those.
Honi the Circle Maker. Let us not forget Honi the Circle Maker. Any other thoughts about what you're going to bring with you into the future from Tinus? And Bill, no, it's not a song. It's an old expression from the U.S., from the United States South. Very good. And Sharon says, or as my father would say, God willing. Very good. Very good. All right. And Lucy says, I loved this tractate.
Yeah, it was a good one.
It was a good one. It absolutely was a good one. Where there, and Diane Yaris is saying, I can't believe over 700 meetings.
amazing.
Yes, right? Saturday night was the
Yeah, we just
700th
celebrated
episode.
700, yeah.
The good Lord willing, the creek don't rise, we'll make it to 2,711. And then we'll have to decide what the next AT venture will be as a group. All right, my friends. That's it, right?
I think that's it.
That's it. We have to go out for a birthday dinner. So it's been great to be with you and to celebrate the completion of Tinus. Tomorrow, with God's help, we'll begin Tractate Megillah, which is about the same length as Tinus. I think it's 32 pages. So it's another month-long tractate, as it were. And also a very colorful one.
Yay.
On page 7 of Tractate Megillah, that will certainly be a key daf, as I recall, with a great story of I think it's Rabbi Zera, right, and Rabbah shared the Purim together, and Rabbah rose up and killed
Oh,
Rabbi
yeah,
Zera.
Remember that story.
And then the next morning resurrected him. And then the next year he said, hey, let's celebrate Purim together. And Rabbi Zera, he had misgivings. We'll learn more about that on page 7. All right, my friends, have a wonderful evening. Now I just give it a moment for the delay to work its way through.